let's chat a little bit about those games that are going to be taking place again, March 30th on Wednesday. Let's take a look at maybe what we are considering our biggest matches to key in on this week. We've got two that we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive on here. We're going to start with Washington Spirit versus North Carolina Courage. They're going to be kicking off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Spirit still on the hunt for their first win in Challenge Cup. North Carolina Courage, the team that's undefeated, right? But also the only team that has 2 wins in this Challenge Cup tournament. Do you have any team that you're leaning or sway towards one way or the other, Lisa? Who would you be picking in this one and why?
I think I'm going to pick North Carolina Courage in this one. They are coming off 2 back-to-back wins. They're not only leading the East region, but they're leading the entire Challenge Cup with 6 points in the standings. This is not a rebuild year for Sean Nahas at any point. And we've seen the first week from North Carolina, it was like, oh, okay, this is fun. It was almost surprising to see what they were able to do. And then the consistency carrying over into match day 2 in the second week of play, they outshot Orlando Pride 17-7 in that match. And the variety of attacking patterns that we saw from North Carolina Courage and Kiki Pickett being a big part of that, attacking down the middle, using the flanks to send crosses in, taking defenders on 1v1, getting in behind back lines, quick transition. It was a lot of diversity in the attacking patterns, which makes North Carolina so dangerous and having that variety of attacking patterns. When you look at Washington Spirit, they were without Emily Sonnet last week. So Amber Brooks stepping in and Amber Brooks getting 2 yellow cards and a red in last week's match for Washington Spirit. So center back is a bit of a question mark for Washington Spirit right now. That injury report is not out yet about Emily Sonnet and who will be in for Washington Spirit, but Washington's also a team that we've seen progressively get better. Their first week, 0-0 draw. Second week, it was a 1-1 draw. They got on the board, but they also conceded a goal, a penalty kick nonetheless. And I think we're seeing strides from that team happening. We're seeing more shot production from Hatch, Sanchez, Trinity Rodman. And I think Rodman has gotten better from week 1 to week 2. They're also a young team in Washington Spirit. And so this quick turnaround from a Friday, Saturday match to a Wednesday match, I think they could pose big trouble for North Carolina, but I still give North Carolina the nod on this one. Sandra, what about you? North Carolina, Washington, young squad, team coming off of 2 wins in North Carolina. Who do you have?
You know what? I'm going to go the opposite way. I like all the arguments that you made for North Carolina Courage. And to be honest, I was tiptoeing a little bit back and forth on whether or not I was going to go with a draw or an actual win or loss in this one. But I'm going to be going towards a win, and I'm going to be giving that to the home side in this one in Washington Spirit. I'm in agreement with what you just said. I feel like if amongst all of the 12 teams that we're watching play in these early weeks of Challenge Cup, I'm looking at the Washington Spirit, and I can see progression. I could see growth. I could see it in the numbers. I could see it in the way in which they're playing, especially if we're just looking at the numbers, how they went from that week 1 scoreless draw to this sort of 1-1 draw in the previous week against Gotham. Numbers far, far different in terms of shots on goal, shot attempts overall, right? Their XG out through the roof practically. So I'm looking to see some more growth and involvement in those areas. I'm going to hope that maybe they get not just one, maybe a couple goals in this game against North Carolina Courage. But I'm with you on the back lines in this one. There's some question marks for the defense there versus North Carolina Courage. There's not. You know, they have their captain in Abby Urseg, who's really good at holding things down there and helping sustain attacks and absorbing pressure. And when we're looking at this attacking presence of Washington Spirit, they're showing us that they can get into the mix of that final third, but maybe they aren't producing the breakout goals that we thought we were going to be seeing. But you know, again, we're in the early days of Challenge Cup. Maybe this is the game where we're going to see that. And there's something about watching these two teams play a little bit. I think when we saw it during last year in 2021, the Spirit sort of rising up to a certain level of play when it came to going against a team like the Courage, a team that had such, you know, a winning culture behind them and such big names on their roster and on the pitch. And it's a little bit different for this team this year, right? We talk about Coach Nahas and how he doesn't call it a rebuild, he called it a retool, and what we're going to see. So this is the Courage side that still has some of those names, right? Where I talked about an Ursig, but there's also somebody like a Denise O'Sullivan who pulls those strings in the midfield. So I think think, yes, could this end in a draw? Sure, but I don't think it's going to end that way. I'm going to give it a win, and I'm going to give it to the Spirit. I just think they're going to have more in their attack to make up for what they don't have in the back line at the moment. And I also think they have a little bit more in their midfield compared to the Courage. So I'm going to go Spirit in this one. We do have a second match, though, Lisa, that we have as our biggest matches this week. We're going to take a look at Portland Thorns FC versus Angel City FC. And we wanted to bring this one up because similar to the East region game that we're bringing up, sort of having implications in that group, if Spirit get a win, it can maybe sort of tip some things a little bit. And honestly, in this West region with this game in particular, Rain not playing midweek, this can also shake some things up in the region here too. So when you're looking at the Thorns versus Angel City, Lisa, tell me who you got and why.
I have Portland Thorns winning this one. We talked about some question marks in the first biggest matchup between Washington and North Carolina. There are question marks here with Angel City. Savannah McCaskill, she received a red card last week, so she is out versus Portland Thorns, and this is a huge loss for Angel City. We've seen the development of Savannah McCaskill in the midfield for Angel City. Her ability to play make, get on the ball, dribble at defenders, slot passes through to Kristen Press, Tyler Lucy up top. So now missing that connecting presence in the midfield for Angel City is going to hurt Angel City. And we've also seen from Portland Thorns over the last 2 weeks incredible growth. We're seeing a new formation in a 3-5-2 being pulled out by head coach Wilkinson for the Thorns. And they played that in their preseason matches. So they had time and competitive matches with that formation. In their first week, there were some holes also going up against OL Reign that can find the holes. However, in Portland's second match, we saw those holes be filled. We saw them problem solving on the pitch in real time with Klingenberg and Kuika out wide being those wing backs in the midfield, making them 5 up. They create these 2v1 opportunities on the flanks for Portland Thorns that make them really dangerous. They also have Sophia Smith and Christine Sinclair, the front two that are really fun to watch. The veteran Canadian international and the younger Sophia Smith, the United States international. These two players together are growing tremendously. It's really fun to watch. I have Portland Thorns winning this one, but I think the biggest matchup to watch in this one is Emily Menges, the center back for Portland Thorns, because without Becky Sauerbrunn, Menges has stepped up and done a tremendous job as that central center back in the 3-back for the Thorns. She'll be matched up with Kristen Press. This matchup is going to be really, really interesting. If Menges can focus entirely on Press defensively, finding that balance between staying tight to her so she doesn't receive the ball in turn, but also giving Press a little bit of space. That way she can't just run past you with her quick step and acceleration. So the matchup between Menges and Press, huge, but I still take Portland Thorns in this one.
I'm with you on that. I think the loss of McCaskill is going to weigh heavily, I think, for Angel City. We've only seen 2 weeks in action of this expansion side, but the chemistry that's been building between a player like McCaskill and a player like Press, I think is showing a lot of promise. And I think without McCaskill in the midfield, it's going to leave even more holes that we're starting to see in some of these expansion sides in that middle third. And I'm going to be going with the Thorns in this one as well. I'm also choosing them to win over Angel City, maybe try to take a hold of that West region for at least a little bit of time, right? Until All Rain come on back and play a match of their own. But I just like what we've been seeing from the Thorns. And I've enjoyed what we've been watching from Angel City as well. But I'm going to want to see something else from this expansion side as well. I think Freya Kuhn is going to have her first little challenge, right, in terms of making some team adjustments. What is this team going to look like without a McCaskill? Who is going to, slot in her place? Is that going to trigger other adjustments across the pitch? Are we going to see Simone Charlie get a start in this game versus coming off of the bench? I mean, we saw this player come off and impact that game immediately.
Yes.
Ended up leading the team, and I believe it was total shots or chances created in terms of the stats that she was picking up, just coming in with a second half performance. So I'm going to be looking for that, even though I'm not going to pick them to win. I'm going with the Thorns, but I want to see these adjustments from Freya Kuhn. I want to see this team and how they respond to a well-adjusted team like Portland Thorns.